Everyone saw the man standing in front of the camera, but behind the camera, a terrifying tragedy was slowly consuming him, and no one knew. Every movie became a race against time. Every shot turned into a battle against memory, and behind every smile, there was a quiet preparation for a silent goodbye. This is not the story of a failed actor. This is the story of a father, a human being, a legend, who slowly learned how to lose in silence. Today, we will hear that untold truth, a truth that, once you know it, leaves no room for jokes or laughter, only silence. Subscribe to our channel and watch the video till the very end. Bruce Willis. Just hearing the name brings one image to mind, the unstoppable hero. John McClane from Die Hard, the man who takes down an entire group of terrorists all by himself. But very few people know how quiet, how painful the final chapter of this strong man's life really was. At the time, Hollywood was full of rumors. Why is Bruce Willis suddenly acting in such terrible movies? Low budgets, weak scripts, nonsense stories. Critics wrote harsh reviews, audiences laughed, trolls took over the internet. But outside the screen, when the camera lights went off, a completely different truth was hiding. Bruce Willis already knew his time was running out. Slowly, he began to realize that memorizing dialogue was becoming difficult. He had to stop again and again on set. Sometimes he would even forget his own lines. The doctor's reports were terrifying. This wasn't just exhaustion. It wasn't a normal problem of aging. It was an illness that slowly steals a person's language, memory, and identity. That's when Bruce made a decision, a quiet, silent decision. He thought, I may not be able to work much longer, but as long as I can, I will secure my family's future. That's why he signed movie after movie, without judging whether they were good or bad, without caring about criticism. Because these movies were paying fast money, and that money became a shield for his family. His wife, Emma Hemming, stood beside him like a rock, and his ex-wife, Demi Moore, even after divorce, their bond never broke. She came back and stood by his side too. And their 5 daughters, not holding their father's hand, but preparing to grow up under his shadow. Bruce knew a day would come when he wouldn't be able to call them by name anymore. Maybe he wouldn't even recognize them. But he wanted to make sure of one thing, that their daughters would never feel unsafe, never feel helpless, never have to depend on anyone. These movies were his final battle. No guns, no explosions, just the silent fight of a father. After 2014, people started noticing Bruce Willis's movies weren't the same anymore. The characters felt empty, the dialogue was minimal, the fire in his acting was gone. Critics said, is he even trying anymore? Audiences said, he's just getting old. But no one knew a terrifying battle had already begun behind the scenes. And the truth was even brutaler. Bruce Willis was slowly being affected by a complex condition called aphasia, a disease that takes away a person's ability to speak. The words stay inside the mind, but refuse to come out of the mouth. For an actor, this isn't just an illness, it's a curse. A man who once delivered long monologues effortlessly now struggled to remember even a single line. Sometimes dialogue had to be fed through an earpiece. Sometimes the script was shortened. Sometimes the character itself was rewritten just so he wouldn't have to speak much. But the disease didn't stop. Day by day, it went deeper. Aphasia doesn't just take speech, it takes memory too. Familiar faces slowly become blurry. Even your own life story starts to feel unfamiliar. Bruce could feel it. He was losing this fight. Still, he didn't stop because he wasn't just an actor. He was a father. He knew a day would come when he wouldn't be able to work anymore. The day the camera would shut off for him forever. And out of that fear, he worked as much as he could. He tried to outrun time. He pushed his body beyond its limits. Because standing in front of him was the future of his 5 daughters, the security of his wife, Emma Hemming, the safety of his family's tomorrow. In 2022, the truth finally came out. Bruce Willis officially retired from acting because he could no longer do it. Speech was no longer under his control. His brain no longer responded the way it used to. That was the day the world finally understood. The man we mocked, the man we called a failure, was quietly fighting for his life. Today, Bruce Willis is no longer in front of the camera. No lights, no dialogue. But he is not alone. Beside him is his wife Emma. Beside him is Demi Moore. And beside him are his 5 daughters, who no longer walk holding their father's hand, but walk under his shadow. Moonlighting. This is where it all began. Back then, Bruce Willis was not a big name. He did small jobs in New York. At one point, he even worked as a bartender. He had dreams, but no certainty. Then, suddenly, Moonlighting happened. A television series where his smile, sharp dialogue, and natural acting entered homes all across America. Overnight, everything changed. From an ordinary man, he became one of the most recognizable faces on American television. Die Hard, 1888. This is where history was written. Before this movie, an action hero meant invincible, emotionless, a Superman who felt no pain. Bruce Willis shattered that idea. His John McClane was not a god. He was an ordinary cop. His feet bled. He got exhausted. He felt fear. He screamed in pain. And yet, he never gave up. That's why audiences connected with him. Because he was like us, flesh and blood, vulnerable, yet unbreakable. Die Hard wasn't just a hit movie. It redefined the action genre. And it turned Bruce Willis into one of the biggest action stars in the world. Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense. To those who thought he only knows how to shoot guns, Bruce Willis silenced them. In Pulp Fiction, he played a broken, complex man, full of moral conflict. So many layers in an action hero, no one expected that. And The Sixth Sense. That silence, that restraint, that final shocking moment, proved one thing clearly. Bruce Willis wasn't just a star. He was a real actor. His career saw highs and lows. Hits came, flops came. But every time he proved himself all over again. This was Bruce Willis at his peak, which makes the fall even more painful. Because when we look at his silence today, we remember once upon a time, this was the man who stood on screen and said, "Yippee-ki-yay," and the whole world applauded. As a child, he suffered from severe stuttering. Even speaking one sentence was painful. Words would get stuck in his throat. Whenever he tried to speak, laughter, mockery, and ridicule came crashing down on him. For a child, this isn't just a problem, it's a wound that destroys confidence. Slowly, Bruce learned to stay quiet. He learned to hide himself because speaking meant humiliation. But one day in high school, his life took an unexpected turn. In drama class, he was given a role. When he stepped onto the stage, he was no longer Bruce Willis. He became someone else. And that's when something miraculous happened. He noticed when he was acting, when he was telling someone else's story instead of his own, his stutter disappeared. The words didn't get stuck. His voice didn't shake. For the first time, language was under his control. That moment became Bruce Willis's moment of freedom. Acting was no longer a hobby. It became a way to survive, the only door through which he could express himself. The boy who was afraid to speak now stood on stage, speaking in front of people. Behind a character, he found his own voice, his strength, his identity. Maybe that day, Bruce understood this stage, this acting, would one day place him in front of the very people who once laughed at him. And today, when we see Bruce Willis as a silent man, this story hurts even more.
because the man who found his voice through acting his whole life eventually had that very voice taken away from him. The man we never saw lose, gunshots, explosions, bleeding feet, no matter what, he always stood tall. But suddenly, one day, the world saw a different Bruce Willis. The new movies were weak, less dialogue, the fire in his acting was gone. Critics said, "Is he even trying anymore?" Audiences said, "He's just getting old." But no one knew. A terrifying battle had already begun behind the scenes. And the truth was even brutaler. Bruce Willis was slowly being affected by a complex condition called aphasia, a disease that takes away a person's ability to speak. The words stay inside the mind, but refuse to come out of the mouth. For an actor, this isn't just